By 1994, Nintendo was riding high on the success of the NES and its follow-up, the SNES. The NES established Nintendo's portfolio of franchises like Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Metroid. The Metroid series draws its creation to two central figures at Nintendo: Satoru Okada, who directed Metroid on the NES, and Yoshio Sakamoto, who was a character designer for the first game and would later direct and supervise future installments. Both men would work with Gunpei Yokoi, who had a Nintendo R&D1 and helped produce the first two games. Gunpei Yokoi is such an important contributor to video games because he created the cross D-pad and invented the Game Boy. Unfortunately, Gunpei Yokoi would die in a car crash in 1997. However, I wanted to demonstrate the legacy he left behind. Other important figures at R&D1 include Makoto Kano, who wrote the scenario, and Hiroyoji Kiyotake, who helped design the characters. In interviews, Yoshio Sakamoto has stated that the biggest influence for Metroid's creation was the 1979 sci-fi movie Alien, even going as far as to name one of the series' recurring antagonist Ridley after director Ridley Scott. Alongside taking notes from Nintendo's other franchises, like Mario's platforming and Zelda's nonlinearity, the name Metroid comes combining the words Metro and Android, forming Metroid. On August 6, 1986, Metroid would be released in Japan on the Famicom Disk System, an add-on to the Famicom that allowed games to store data cheaper and utilize higher fidelity. They would come in these yellow floppy disks that the international release wouldn't have to worry about. Metroid would release to North American and European audiences on January 15, 1988. Metroid would go on to become a success for Nintendo, and in 1991, it received a sequel in Metroid 2: Return of Samus on the Game Boy, which also proved to be a success. In Metroid, players take control of Samus Aran, a bounty hunter hired by the Galactic Federation to take on near-death missions all by herself. And yes, I said herself. When Metroid released, it was kept a closed secret so much that the instruction manual for the NES originally referred to Samus as a he. Even the tie-in material had Samus accompanied by a band of cheerleaders. Way to go, Samus. According to Sakamoto, during the development of Metroid, a member of R&D1 asked if it would be cool if the person inside the suit was actually a woman, and the idea stuck. So basically, a one-off comment created one of video games' most iconic heroines. Her first name, Samus, comes from the 3rd century Macedonian poet Samus, and it's derived from the Greek name Samos. Her last name, Aran, comes from the full name of the Brazilian football player, Pelé. In the original Metroid, Samus's backstory was never elaborated on until the Zero Mission manga in 2003, a full 17 years after Metroid 1 released. However, to cut it some slack, Metroid Zero Mission released at the same time, so it was meant to introduce a new audience to the franchise. Samus Aran was born on Earth colony K2L. One day, her home was attacked by the space pirates led by Ridley. Ridley and the space pirates then proceed to destroy Samus's home and her parents. Left an orphan, Samus is adopted by the Chozo, a peaceful humanoid bird species, and is trained to be a warrior. After completing her trials, Samus obtains the power suit and sets off into the galaxy as a bounty hunter, set on defeating Ridley and the space pirates, alongside the Metroid threat, a weapon created by the Chozo but has gone rogue and threatens all life in the galaxy. When it comes to the story of Metroid, Metroid's plots are never front stage. The series is more known for their gameplay. In the games, nothing is ever directly told to you. Instead, Metroid tells its story through its gameplay. The original Metroid story involves Samus stopping the space pirates and defeating Mother Brain on planet Zebes. Metroid 2 has Samus travel to the Metroid homeworld of SR-388 and wipe out all Metroids on the planet, eventually culminating in a final battle with the Queen Metroid. After defeating it, Samus comes across a Metroid hatching from its larva, believing Samus to be its mother. Samus, sparing the baby Metroid, takes it back to her ship and gives it to the scientists aboard the space colony Ceres, hoping it will be used for the good of civilization. This is where Super Metroid begins. Super Metroid opens with a monologue of Samus recapping the previous two games. One thing that's great about this monologue is that the recap is done in Super Metroid's graphics. It makes me wish Nintendo remade the original two installments with Super Metroid's art style, although we technically have Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid 2 on the 3DS, and if you want to count AM2R, but I'll stop there. Going back to the opening, it's one of the few times where Samus speaks in the games. There are moments in future installments show monologue about the current situation, like in Metroid Fusion. Besides that, Samus is a tried and true silent protagonist, but not to the extent of Link. Another great addition to the opening is the theme of Super Metroid. This track is so iconic that it became the official theme of Samus Aran, appearing throughout the series, and being featured in other Nintendo games like Super Smash Bros. So not even a minute in, and we already see how legendary Super Metroid would become. Samus explains that after delivering the baby Metroid to the scientist, she immediately received a distress signal and returns to the space colony. After arriving and discovering the state of the colony, Samus finds the baby Metroid until Ridley makes a sudden appearance, battling Samus until making his escape with the baby and setting the space colony to self-destruct. I don't know why a space colony has a self-destruct sequence, but my headcanon is the space pirates rigged it with explosives. After escaping the colony, Samus follows Ridley to planet Zebes. Samus' mission will have her navigate planet Zebes, defeat the bosses of each area, and recover the baby Metroid. Once Samus reaches Ridley's lair, she manages to defeat the space pirate and discover the broken case which used to store the baby Metroid. Samus then travels to Torian, discovering the Metroids have returned thanks to the space pirates copying the baby Metroid's DNA and Mother Brain's return. Later in Torian, Samus uncovers the baby Metroid, now grown massive and proceeding to suck her life energy. Stopping at the last second, the baby Metroid runs away, and Samus continues traversing Torian. Arriving at Mother Brain's chamber, Samus manages to destroy Mother Brain's jar until she transforms into a giant monster. Samus battles Mother Brain until she is incapacitated by her Hyper Beam. As Mother Brain is about to finish Samus, the baby Metroid intervenes, sucking Mother Brain's life energy and giving it to Samus. However, Mother Brain is able to defeat the baby Metroid, but before passing, it gives Samus the Hyper Beam, and Samus gives Mother Brain a taste of the rainbow, reducing Mother Brain to ashes. However, in a last-ditch attempt to defeat Samus, Mother Brain activates the planet's self-destruct sequence. Samus escapes to her ship, but not before rescuing the animals that helped her earlier, and flies away as planet Zebes explodes, completing the mission. Super Metroid came out in a time when video game stories were much simpler. Super Metroid never overtly tells the player where to go or what's happening. You're left to piece it all together through the gameplay. This is a point I'm going to explain, but to go back to the story, sometimes less is more, and Super Metroid is able to accomplish that. That being said, with the jump into 16-bit, how does Super Metroid take advantage of the SNES's improved hardware and improve from its predecessors? Samus can now perform more actions than previously now that we're using the SNES controller. Samus's control in Super Metroid feels a lot tighter compared to Metroid 1 and 2. There's less floatiness this time around, and you can be more precise when platforming. Super Metroid puts more emphasis on combat, but Samus is able to handle it thanks to her improved capabilities. Samus in Metroid 1 could only shoot in 3 directions. Now by using the triggers, Samus can aim her gun diagonally. I shouldn't have to explain how great it is to be able to shoot in 8 directions in a 2D platformer. Samus can shoot her cannon by pressing the B button, and after you obtain the charge beam, you can hold down the shoot button to release a charge shot. Samus can now run by holding down the Y button, and the speed booster upgrade lets her zoom across the screen, and perform the shine spark at the cost of health. Samus can also perform other unique abilities, the coolest being the crystal flash, where Samus will crystallize herself in a cocoon and recover health. There are certain prerequisites like having a certain amount of health, missiles, and bombs, so it should only be used as a last resort. When you want to select missiles or other gadgets like the grapple beam, you have to hit the select button until you've chosen what gadget you want. Selecting missiles will replace your beam and deplete your ammo. However, defeating enemies will drop ammo pickups. Super missiles are a stronger variation of regular missiles that will do triple the amount of damage and open green doors. Power bombs operate the same way and will replace your bombs when in morph ball. Power bombs will open orange doors and reveal hidden paths. I'm sure everyone in their first playthrough power bombed every room they're in when hunting for secrets. I've done it, no shame. On your first playthrough, having the select button be used for item switching is a little awkward like it was for me. Super Metroid does take advantage of every button on the controller. At the very least, you can adjust the controls before starting your game. I'm a B dash and Y shoot kind of guy, but it's your preference. Super Metroid's non-linear structure means that it prefers to show, not tell. In my opinion, that's what gives Super Metroid its cult-like status. It's honestly a breath of fresh air, because nowadays games are so used to telling you what to do. Unlike Metroid 1, which suffered from copy and paste level design, Super Metroid's Planet Zebes is able to offer more variety with each room you visit, making exploration on repeated playthroughs much easier. Super Metroid has a grab and go mentality when it comes to exploration. If you play it right, you'll never have to backtrack, and you can comfortably grab every item in one go. The only other Metroid game that mimicked it successfully was Metroid Prime. Early in the game, when you explore deeper into Brinstar, you'll fall down the red tower and discover that you can't return up, so you're forced to traverse deeper into Brinstar. When you arrive at Lower Brinstar, you're restricted into which rooms you can explore, because in certain rooms, Samus will take damage from the heat until she obtains the Various Suit. If you keep exploring, you'll discover the high jump moons, which allow Samus to jump high enough to reach the entrance to Kraid's lair. There you'll battle the first boss Kraid and obtain the Various Suit, giving her resistance to hot areas. That's just one example, but you can see how Super Metroid is able to get the point across. In Metroid 1, found items could boil down to shooting a random wall or jumping into a pit of lava. On the upper right screen, the map will update as you discover new areas. If you want to access a more detailed map, you can pause the game at any time to get a better picture, but until you access a map room, it'll only show the rooms you've explored. In certain rooms, there will be a dot on your map which represents points of interest to investigate. Sometimes they can be upgrades for Samus or be a save/recharge room. Hidden items like missile expansions won't be marked, so you'll have to use the X-ray visor or view a completionist map. In total, there are 100 collectible items to find in Planet Zebes, some of which are mandatory to beat the game. Others like missile expansions and energy tanks are optional. However, continuously expanding your arsenal will make your playthrough much easier, as exploration is the name of the game in Super Metroid. Samus will also obtain beam upgrades which can be combined to deal more damage, the exception being the Spazer and Plasma Beam. The Spazer Beam will be the first you obtain, which will split Samus's beam in 3 projectiles, dealing more damage, and is great until you get the Plasma Beam. The Wave Beam will make Samus's beams travel through walls. It's great to use on security doors if you need to backtrack. The Ice Beam you'll obtain after backtracking with the Speed Booster. It'll freeze enemies in place so you can follow up with a quick attack. The Ice Beam is mandatory because it's the only way Metroids will become vulnerable. Finally, there's the Plasma Beam, that's obtained after defeating Dragon. It'll shoot through enemies and replace your Spazer Beam. There's the Various Suit and Gravity Suit, they're also mandatory. Other upgrades you'll need are the Grapple Beam, which sucks. Fuck the Grapple Beam. Getting the Space Jump makes it completely irrelevant. The X-Ray Scope you can consider optional if you know where the hidden items are. However, it was useful in letting me know where the pit was when getting this energy tank in Norfair. If you're inclined, at any point you could turn off abilities in the pause menu. Planet Zebes has 5 areas you'll have to explore. Criteria is the opening area, and you'll land here after arriving. Its layout is meant to teach you Super Metroid's world and Samus's controls. Besides connecting to Torian, Criteria also connects to the wrecked ship. After defeating Kraid and receiving the Various Suit, you'll explore deeper into the next area, Norfair. Norfair consists of lava tunnels and caverns, as well as connecting to Ridley's Lair. Ridley's Lair offers the most challenge with the strongest variation of space pirates. Ridley at least is not that difficult. His pogo attack will make him low enough to inflict damage, and if he starts flying, Samus can jump high enough to reach him. Brinstar is the largest area in the game because it's divided into 3 sections. Early in the game, Samus will explore Old Brinstar to obtain her old abilities. Upper Brinstar is a new addition to Super Metroid. It contains jungle environments where you'll face the first mini-boss and obtain the super missiles. Lastly, Lower Brinstar, or the Red Tower, connects to the elevator leading to Norfair and Kraid's Lair. You'll fall down the tower during your first visit, and won't be able to return up until you get the Ice Beam. Scaling the Red Tower when traveling to the wrecked ship will get you the power bombs. Before entering the Red Tower, it's a good idea to get the Charge Beam, because it's a great fallback weapon to use on bosses if you're low on missiles. Brinstar will also teach you Samus's other abilities the game doesn't tell you. The wrecked ship I consider a part of Criteria, but upon arriving you'll discover the power is not working. This is because Phantoon has shut off the power, and upon defeating him, it'll turn back on, but so will the enemies. The reason you explore the wrecked ship is because you need the gravity suit to explore the next area, Meridia. Meridia is the underwater level, but thanks to the gravity suit, Samus can traverse normally without any hindrance. There are 2 entrances to Meridia. The first is through the wrecked ship, which a lot of first-time players will do, but if you travel back to the glass tunnel in Brinstar, you can use a power bomb to break the glass and access another entrance. Meridia is my least favorite area because of the sand waterfalls, especially when you have to backtrack down the quicksand to grab all the items. Be careful in this room, because if you're grabbed by the tentacles, you'll fall to the lower floor and you'll have to deal with the sand waterfall. This room sucks too because you have to deal with the physics of the grappling hook underwater. It makes getting the space jump a great reward after defeating Dragon because you can give the finger to platforming. Once all bosses are defeated, you can explore Torian, the final area. The returning Metroids are the only enemies in Torian, but they can quickly drain your health if you're not careful. The Ice Beam will freeze them in place so you can follow up with a missile. If a Metroid does grab Samus, immediately roll into a ball and use bombs to subdue them. Now I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. What if I told you instead of traversing the world normally and playing the game that intended you to play, instead you decide to do a little sequence breaking? What is sequence breaking? It's basically when you manipulate the game's mechanics to get items earlier than intended. Here's a great example. In order to get the Wave Beam, you have to first get the Grapple Beam and backtrack to Norfair in order to grapple across a pit of spikes to enter the room the Wave Beam is located in. If you're trying to save on time, instead in the bubble room, you can open a door in the floor below and sprint up across the room and wall jump to get to the next floor. Make sure Samus doesn't enter the previous room when you're trying to gather speed. After that, you enter the room before the Wave Beam and jump into the spikes, take damage, and use your invincibility frames to wall jump to the ledge and get the Wave Beam early. A favorite move used in speedruns of Super Metroid is the Mach Ball. In Upper Brinstar, to my understanding, it's when you jump into a door and morph into a ball. Use the momentum you gain to get a boost of speed to pass the gates, obtaining super missiles early. I feel Super Metroid is one of those games that was designed to be broken, to the point where some sequence breaks were purposely put in there by the developers. Other methods involve glitches, which the developers never intended. Nevertheless, speedrunners often take advantage of exploits in their runs. My point is that Super Metroid rewards players as a testament to their skill. I said in my story recap, Super Metroid tells the story through its gameplay. It does this in three ways. The first, like I said, is the gameplay. Second is its atmosphere. And finally, its music. Now I've been lying a little bit because Super Metroid isn't a true non-linear experience. You have to obtain items in certain areas to access other areas. Exploring Meridia without obtaining the gravity suit will make your trip an underwater hell. However, because your reward for completing the wrecked ship is the gravity suit, and Meridia being the next area, the player is able to put two and two together, and never does Super Metroid tell you that. When returning to Northfair after getting the speed booster, in the long corridor connecting both areas, you'll instinctively want to speed boost down the hallway. However, you'll end up breaking a set of blocks falling down a long pit. There you'll meet a friendly animal that teaches you how to shine spark by mimicking its movement. This method is repeated when you're taught how to wall jump. Super Metroid provides players with context clues and lets you experiment until you get it right. Once you master it, it becomes a skill you can use to traverse planet Zebes. If I had to describe Metroid in one word, it would be isolation. Samus is all alone on planet Zebes and its haunting environments. Now that we're on the Super Nintendo, Super Metroid's graphics and art style can display more detailed environments. Ridley's Lair is one of my favorites because the background has this haze effect as a result of the heat, accompanied by the music making you feel like you're in hell. To this day, this game's art style still holds up. The evolution from the NES to the SNES allowed for more detailed sprite work. Samus' sprite in this game is my favorite design of hers. The amount of detail they put in is incredible, to the point where it's Samus' default appearance in promotional material. For the music, Super Metroid's soundtrack was composed by Kenji Yamamoto alongside Minato Hamano. He had previously composed other songs for other licensed Nintendo games, however Super Metroid would be his fourth project and first time composing one of Nintendo's IPs. His style consists of utilizing heavy drums and electric guitars to name a few. By using the SNES's higher RAM, Super Metroid is able to emphasize the cold and horror themes of the series. Samus' monologue in the opening would end up becoming her main theme, and the jingle from the opening of Metroid 1 makes its return when you start playing. Lower Brinstar's track is one of my favorites. It uses the spin jump sound effect to coordinate with the beat. Yamamoto would return to the Metroid series when composing the Prime trilogy. There, he would remix a lot of Super Metroid songs, like the previously mentioned Lower Brinstar, returning as Torva's Catacombs in Prime 2. And spoiler, the Prime games have great soundtracks as well. The last thing I'm going to talk about is how the speedrunning community has kept this game alive. Super Metroid is the poster child for speedruns, to the point that the score isn't time, but frames instead. If you want to witness the crazy sequence breaks, watch the best speedrunners and see for yourself. Speedrunning Super Metroid is so popular that Nintendo themselves have tried taking legal action against the speedrunning community. However, that won't stop speedrunners because their events are still being hosted, and if anything, it's fans showing their appreciation for Super Metroid. Looking at this game's legacy, to me Super Metroid is the gold standard for Metroidvanias, and is remembered as one of the SNES's greatest hits. Do yourself a favor and play this game if you haven't. That being said, that's all I have to say on Super Metroid. Thank you for watching, no long outro this time, take care, and have a great day.